Was this Missouri servant one of America's earliest serial killers? In October of 1896, two daughters of Kansas City attorney Charles Mussey Jr. died in their home at 2411 Forest Avenue. 4-year-old Elizabeth began convulsing and died on October 23rd. By the time her 10-year-old sister Susan died the next day, rumors were already spreading through the city that the girls had been poisoned. At first, Mr. Mussey turned away the coroner and managed to keep the newspapers oblivious. But after a second death, there was no avoiding an investigation. Immediately, the family's domestic servant, Alice Platt, became the primary suspect. However, authorities were slow to respond, allowing Alice to leave the house after she was fired from working in the Mussey home. While there were not many forensic tests available to them at the time, the suspected poison, strychnine, was one of the few substances police could test for in the 19th century. Yet, they did not gather any evidence to try to prove how the children had come to be poisoned. A newspaper reporter searched Alice's trunk, and he reportedly found pills containing strychnine. But because the chain of custody was so dubious, nothing in the trunk could be used as evidence. Despite this, circumstantial evidence against Alice began to pile up. Mr. and Mrs. Mussey told police that Alice had foretold of something terrible happening to the girls in the weeks before their deaths, saying that a dark cloud was growing ever nearer to them, but the parents had thought nothing of it. Witnesses corroborated these claims and added that they had suspected Alice had also been the arsonist responsible for 3 fires on the Mussey property in recent months. A doctor who had attended to Elizabeth when she was dying recalled that only a month prior he had also attended to her grandmother, Mrs. Torrance, in the same home when she'd suddenly become ill and died. The laundrywoman hired by the Mussey family recalled that Alice had asked Mrs. Torrance if she was afraid to die not an hour before her death. If that wasn't enough, just 2 weeks prior to the deaths, little Hugh Mussey overdosed on morphine given to him by Alice, but he survived. Alice maintained her innocence under heavy questioning and spent nearly 24 hours in custody as investigators tried to sweat her out. Even after she was charged with capital murder and moved to the Jackson County Jail, Alice stuck to her innocence. Alice Platt was put on trial for over a week in February 1897. Finding a jury took 2 days alone. Finding 12 men who had not already made up their minds about the case and who didn't have moral qualms with the death penalty proved a challenge. In Missouri at the time, capital murder charges were all or nothing, freedom or the death penalty. Alice's attorney, Blake Woodson, posed alternative theories about how the girls could have come to be poisoned. Without evidence, he accused Mrs. Mussey of having threatened to harm her own children to get back at Mr. Mussey for alleged infidelity. He also pointed out that strychnine is a common household rat poison and the girls could have ingested it accidentally. In the end, thanks to the lack of physical evidence and the weight of the sentence, it took only 12 hours of deliberation to come to the verdict of not guilty. Mr. and Mrs. Mussey were so exhausted from the ordeal, they urged the prosecution not to appeal the verdict. They returned to raising their remaining 2 children and even had another baby girl in 1899. Alice Platt was set free and returned to her hometown of Charlatan, Missouri with her family. Just a few years later, though, she was declared insane by the courts and sent to an asylum in St. Joseph, Missouri. She had apparently been sending threatening letters to young men about town. She wasn't released until 5 years later, in 1905, after which she married and disappeared into the rough and often lawless Oklahoma Territory. Was she a serial killer, a charlatan gone wrong, or an innocent scapegoat?